Hey, welcome to Fluid Backstage 2016. I'm with Danielle Strickland, and she's big in the Salvation Army Church movement. She's got a couple movements she's running on. We'll talk to you about her in just a few moments, but I want to go back to the whole idea of the Salvation Army.
Sure.
And how you found a home with that. You know, one of the paramount church communities in our nation. How did you find a home there?
Well, I'll tell you, actually, it's kind of more tribal for me. My parents were both orphans. My mom was a foster kid at 10. My dad was sold as a baby, I think in the Butter Box in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And in two different communities, the Salvation Army just decided to go door knocking in poor communities looking for kids that might want some hope, and found them both. They found hope, they found Jesus, they found life. They got married, 17, 18 years old. They joined the Salvation Army. And kind of I was raised in that context.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What is today? What is your role with the Salvation Army?
So right now I'm in Los Angeles, and my role is a social justice secretary for the western side of America. So my main kind of job with them is to create a strategy to combat human trafficking.
Oh, wow, that's huge. Human trafficking, another buzzword in the Christian circle as of the past, I don't know, 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
It's been something huge and major. It's popping up in the news feeds, popping up on Facebook, Twitter, all over the place. What was your introduction to that?
Really, my introduction, and I usually think, whenever God's trying to get our attention about an issue, it is everywhere. Like, I think the fact that the idea of human trafficking, not just in Christian circles, but watch a movie, watch the news. I mean, it is everywhere. And I think that's just always an indicator that God's trying to say, guys, let's pay attention to this. Fastest growing human crime on the planet, 27 million people enslaved. Someone's got to say, okay, how are we going to do this thing? For me, I moved incarnationally into poor communities and really made a lot of good friends with women who had been domestically trafficked and prostituted and pimped and sold as children and all kinds of things in Canada. And sort of gathering that information, first I just thought it was one or two or three, and then the more I did it, the more I realized how systemic the evil was and how we needed to challenge it one by one in terms of creating meaningful relationships that led to transformation. But also there's a much bigger solution too, which is systemic injustice, and it needs to be addressed. And we need to actually stop the traffic. So one of the things I'm really involved in is a movement called stopthetraffic.org. It's a global campaign to stop human trafficking. And the idea is that there's all kinds of different strategies around injustice and fighting for justice and things. And I think sometimes we're in danger of kind of overcomplicating, we'll leave that to the professionals who know what they're doing. And I think yes, there's space for that, and we need to do that really well and excellently, but also there's space for everybody. This is a fight. We're going to need everybody in, and it takes a whole community of people to traffic one person. And it takes a whole community of people to untraffic them and to stop. So I feel like everybody has a part to play. So it's about empowering people to get to that place.
It seems to me, when you talk about this,
Yeah.
It seems like it is not this, but it is massive.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the amount of people it takes to, if I'm using the correct terminology, to rehabilitate someone that's stuck in this, to turn them around, to get them back on their feet, and to plug them back into society.
Yeah.
Do you ever get stuck with the notion that this is impossible?
Yeah, I think I get tempted to believe that, and then things happen, God's kingdom emerges in weird, funny ways, and I have all these kind of encounters and stories where just the smallest and seemingly insignificant thing that leads to these incredible things. And you just realize that God is on the side of the poor, right? And when you start realizing that, and that you're partnering in this thing that can't be stopped called the advancement of the kingdom, you realize, oh yeah, this just looks like it's a facade to say that, we're in trouble here, when actually really there's a way here. So all kinds of things, even in England, a bunch of housewives got together, kind of some older, some younger, and started this little action group for Stop the Traffic. This is just one little example. And they started just kind of brainstorming about what they could do in their community and getting to know folks. And they just realized that actually women that were trafficked, or people that were trafficked, had to get from the airport to wherever to meet whoever, and they realized that taxis were used all the time. So they just started this sticker. They made up this sticker themselves for taxi cabs in their district, in their bureau. And it just said, if you're being trafficked, call this number for help. And a bunch of taxi cab drivers just let them put it in their cab. and like 7 victims were found, you know, within a couple of months. And now it's become this massive taxi campaign. But I mean, it started with these women brainstorming together, like, okay, what could we do? And let's just think of some stuff. And then one of them had a cousin who was a taxi, you know, it's just like, and I think we just don't realize just how, if we'll do it, like if we'll embrace it, there's a way, you know, there's always a way that God wants to make a way.
You, in your last statement, you talked about the advancement of the kingdom. Now, as we move forward, and it's a fantastic story because it really shows the providence of God throughout all this. We see the advancement of the kingdom, but we also see the advancement of technology. If you look at the advancement of technology now, what kind of a role do you think that has in the lifestyle these people are kind of stuck in with human trafficking? How does that play into that?
Well, I mean, the obvious example is pornography. If you're looking,
that's what I was getting at.
Okay, all right.
Well, there's other ways, but I want.
Yeah, so there's negative. You know, I think technology is what it is. It's a tool, and it can be used for evil, and it can be used for good. And so the real opportunity that we're involved in is to actually try to use technology for good, right? So that's really going to be But pornography is a targeted. The sex industry is targeting boys and girls, but boys specifically at the age of 7. So when my little kid types in Minecraft videos on the YouTube browser or on his little iPhone when he's on the Wi-Fi, up will pop pornography images in order to. Now, I was at a university campus in Kentucky doing a bunch of meetings there a couple of years back. And for my whole entire life, I've been rallying around getting women out. And for most of the time, the dialogue around men has just been, can you please stop? Like, you know, like just snap out of it. Like come on, guys. Like, and when I was speaking to this Asbury crew, so there, Asbury University, a couple thousand students, and all like bubble town, Christian university, Christian town, Christian state, you know, like, I mean, you couldn't get more bubbled. And I'm talking to them about this trafficking thing and how to get involved and stuff. And all of a sudden, it just dawns on me that, you know, they are the most resourced, able, educated, you know, technology equipped generation ever. Like, and probably on them is the job to end trafficking, but none of them can move towards it because they're paralyzed by pornography. And we had this live poll, you know, where we just said, how often do you view porn? And it's one of those polls where you can vote with your phone. So it's kind of anonymous, but it's also live. So it's got this like really cool vibe to it. And we just said, you know, I never view porn. Sometimes I view porn. I always view porn. I can't stop viewing porn. And we just all sat there. Like, I remember the principal, all the faculty of the universities in the front. It's like this holiness university. I mean, it's like if there's a Christendom picture, that was it. And these beautiful, you know, kids, and just all of them started like just can't stop using porn. And it was like this confession moment. Like, it was like a corporate confession in anonymity, right? Like, and all of us, we just took a step back on the platform, and we were like, oh my gosh, like, and we just realized, like, this is not like men behaving badly. This isn't like boys being bad, which is sort of the narrative the whole time. This is an assault. Like, this is a weapon of the sex industry. And until we're willing to like actually say we're victims of this thing and we need to get free from this thing, we're never going to get to the job, which is the whole strategy of the enemy. And then ever since then, every time I have a chance to talk to young boys, I'm always like, guys, like, this isn't your fault. Like, this is something that's happening to you. It's our fault for like letting it happen to you and not mentioning a way out, you know. And so I've been brainstorming, trying to talk to guys, trying to look for material, trying to get churches to address it like it's happening and it's real, and to offer some ways out. There's a new campaign called Ladies Man, with a guy from Edmonton that's launched it, a team of us. I'm one of the founding sort of launchers and promoters of a thing, Ladies Man, which is around identifying this area and getting people free. Yeah.
Do you think that if we could figure out how to stop porn, especially the online stuff, because you and I both realized back in our day, it was, you know, if you wanted to look at porn, you had to go down to your little community store, the little Beckers or you know, 9/11. Yeah, right. Remember that stuff? Yeah. Avondale, all that good stuff. And you'd have to walk up to the magazine rack, not the bottom one, but you had to go all the way to the top one. And on the front shelf there, that's where it would be in plastic wrap. And you had to get brave enough to grab that, pay for it, and show your ID.
Well, and that's where that dialogue comes, like shame on you,
Yeah,
right? But
right,
and that's
right.
where the whole dialogue is shifted. This is no longer shame on you. This is an 8-year-old boy that put into YouTube, I'd like to watch Minecraft, and all of a sudden feels shame and guilt and hides it and keeps it, and then his brain is, you know, releasing dopamine like in rivers, and he wants to do it again, but feels bad about it. So I mean, a conversation with a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid at university trying to love Jesus, weeping, you know, just a picture of beauty, you know, as a young emerging Christian man, and weeping, saying, please help me, like I hate myself. Like I wake up every day, I don't even want to look at myself in the mirror, the stuff I'm viewing, the stuff I'm doing, and I know I'm participating in this evil and I can't stop. Would you help me, please? And it just completely changed my world in terms of even how we fight this thing called sex trafficking.
How do you fight it?
Yes.
When it is, it's right there. It is right there. Every single person, no matter how many blocks you put on this thing, no matter how many blocks you put on your computer, because they're all out there. There are Christian organizations that are targeting this. No matter what is put out there, there are always ways to get around it. Yeah. What is the answer?
Well,
what is even close to some kind of an answer to this?
Well, the answer always is in truth, right? The answer always is in owning the truth. So the answer always is like, I'm one of those ones they're trying to assault, and this is how it's working for me. The answer is actually transparency. It's getting rid of layers of shame and guilt. This old dialogue has to go. A new dialogue has to emerge where we're actually all trying to navigate this thing. What does freedom look like for us personally, but also not just for us personally. This is our personal freedom is about using our freedom then to actually fight, you know, the source of this stuff, which are women and girls and boys enslaved all over the world. So I think it has to be a dialogue. It has to be a conversation. It has to be guys that are brave enough to start speaking and saying, actually, I can't look at myself either. And this is what I got. I mean, even the world, you know, the Fight the New Drug campaign, fantastic campaign. If you haven't checked it out yet, check it out. But it's the world saying this is bad for us. Like this is bad for our brain. This is bad for our development. This is bad for our lives. These are bad for our relationships, you know. And the world's even saying that now. And again, back to the trafficking thing, like when everybody, you know, is saying, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. I feel like God is saying, guys, like this is the secret. Like, yeah, this is the button. This is the one. So I feel like I wish the answer was easy, and that if it was easy, everyone would do it. It's not easy, it's hard, but it's going to be about honesty, transparency, relationships, having the conversations, the difficult ones, about stripping shame and guilt off of the conversation and start to talk about empowerment, freedom, healing, transformation. And I mean, all of the cultural, the commodification of human beings, right? Which ultimately porn is like the greatest example of. We just commodify human beings. That is the greatest evil of our time. I mean, it literally is the disease that will take us out.
I agree.
That is the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
So we have got to figure out how to not be commodities. And even in a Christian culture, you know, where we try to fight the commodification of human beings with the commodification of the gospel. You know, like if you buy this product, or if you buy this thing, or if you go to this fancy church, or we have got to literally fight a different way. Like David came at Goliath with a stone, not a sword.
Okay,
We got to come up with some strategies. It's going to be small, authentic. It's going to feel irrelevant, and you know, but it's going to be the way.
Let's try and break that down in a practical way. So Salvation Army,
Yeah.
Years ago, noticed a problem
Right.
with the poor,
Right.
and they decided to do something about it.
Yes.
And as a result, North America wide, I don't know how far their reach is,
Yes.
but for years they have been the go-to. You drive by anything, you see the Salvation Army sign, everyone knows that. You go in a mall during Christmas time, you're going to see those little, you know, those money bags. You're going to see all that. It is a worldwide phenomenon. And they're targeting the poor and the injustices of the world, even at that point. Have they been able to get on board with this vision, with your vision? And are there strategies moving forward to tackle this in the same way that the poor was targeted years ago?
Yeah, we're trying, and just for the record, like I'm spending my life getting on board with the vision of the Salvation Army, not the opposite. You know what I mean? Like William Booth, I got it tattooed on my arm. This is the vision of William Booth, a founding song of the Salvation Army called "O Boundless Salvation," and the story is of this massive. I'm at like, I'm literally like, this is it, you know, like this is a hard cover up, right?
That's it, man. That's cool.
But the song isn't really just about the Salvation Army. It's about the kingdom, you know, of God that's going to come. And his belief, of course, was that salvation was going to come like a mighty ocean and redeem the world, everything in the world. So, I mean, he wrote this book called "In Darkest England and the Way Out," which was a Times bestseller at the origins of the Salvation Army phenomenon that it is. And it was literally like everything can be redeemed. So he talked about recycling. in the late 1800s, where people were like, can't, what? Like, stop it. And he's like, no, paper. Why are we throwing it out? We should reuse it. And then so he started a magazine, which was about the proclamation of the gospel, but it was also about employing the poor and recycling paper just to show that it could be done. So that was kind of the birthing of our, Christian magazine, was actually this like project of reclaiming and redeeming the earth, So cool. And there's so many of those stories. And I think now, like the temptation, and the church, this is a redemptive lift problem, is that it's kind of good news, right? But even like the Israelites, the temptation is to settle down and do what you know. And so the Salvation Army can just do mercy because we're known for our mercy. And so like we'll be merciful. But to do justice, to kind of go into those deeper spots where God wants us to go, to do advocacy, to do social reform, that's risky business. That's like reputation killing possibilities. That's like, brand management fiascos. Like that's risky stuff. And so the temptation for the church and for even just our own individual lives, and even for organizations like the Salvation Army, is to really keep following Jesus in this vision that he has of redeeming the earth, and not just settle down on how to look good or be good. And you know what I mean? There might be actually even more for the Salvation Army to do to redeem the earth, Yeah.
The theme of this conference is called, and there's no doubt in my mind, there is no doubt in my mind that you are called to do this and called to tackle that. Yes. 2 questions. First part of that is how did you receive that call? Yes. And the second one, we'll end off this one, is to all the young adults that are watching, or whoever's watching this, what would you say to them about your call and what it means for them in their seek for the call of God in their life?
Right. So a couple things is, one, everybody's called. And the calling is to be the people of God in the world. And whenever we forget that we're called, like whenever we forget who we are, is when we're in a boatload of trouble. And that's, this humanitarian crisis we're in right now is people just forgetting who we are. Yeah. And I was just speaking about this the other day. I think Bruxy says this too, like the story begins in Genesis 1, not Genesis 3, right? In this like image of God, in the way that we treat one another, and we see the goodness of God in each other. For me, the calling really just began. One is I experienced freely God's grace, forgiveness, healing, through the sacrificial love of other people. So that kind of, I understood that God's love and people sacrificing were connected. It's a sovereign power of God with this like participation of humanity. So those 2 things have never been separated in my mind. I think when we separate those things, we're in some heaps of trouble. If you can believe in like this sovereign, amazing power of God and then not think you have anything to do, that's just heresy, really. And it's also very Greek of us, isn't it, to be super wise and philosophical and not live it out, right? That's just like, in Hebrew culture, that's like non-existent. They would just say you're stupid, right? They just wouldn't. So I think that the idea is to rediscover identity as partners in this great project that God has. And all of us are that, and when we forget that we're that, and no matter what you're called specifically to, because I don't think it's a thing that I'm called to the poor. I think the church is called to the poor. Jesus is called to the poor. Jesus' kingdom is a calling to the poor. Like the question becomes not, are you called to the poor? The question becomes like, how will you live out your calling to the poor? Like, how will you live out your calling to the broken? How will you live out your calling to the hurting? That's the kingdom. That's just what. So even Paul, if your calling is to church planning, Paul's last instruction to church planners is like, whatever you do, just don't forget the poor. Like that's just like, if you want it, like 101 on church planning, don't forget the poor. Yeah. So the question isn't like, am I called to it? The question is, how do I work that calling out? And I think that's where we could really use just a lot more creative thinking, beauty spaces, artistic insight, just thinking outside the box about how our lives could actually be these reflections of God's calling to redeem the earth and go to the broken and the dark spots and be the light. That's just like what his kingdom's like, and we're all called to it. Yeah.
Well, Danielle, thank you for being a part of Fluid this year. Thank you for being part of the Backstage 2016. Folks, I hope you enjoyed it. And I believe you have a lab to go to now, so we'll enjoy that. And
Great.
God bless you.
For having me.
Thanks.
Bless you.